Hi guys, welcome to my channel Lush Foliage. I hope you guys are fine and are safe. So you might have come across something like this at some point of time in your gardening hobby. Now what exactly is this? Now this is called as sun bleaching or something related with sunlight. This is very common, especially for people who cannot move their plants quite often, especially when you have a very small balcony. This is due to the sunlight. Now what happened over here is I had moved these plants over here because there was a lot of sun in the other direction, but unfortunately because as the season changed, the sun's direction also tends to change. Now all this while this place was getting only morning direct sunlight for like 2 to 3 hours, but then the sun's direction changed and then it started getting more sunlight. In fact, it was getting sunlight until 1 p.m. in the afternoon, but unfortunately I don't have much space where I can shift this plant because there is sun everywhere on my terrace. From morning to afternoon to evening, there is a good amount of sunlight. So what happened over here, I completely forgot about this plant because ideally this plant is supposed to have yellow leaves like this, and it is very difficult to detect whether this plant is getting too much of sunlight or too much of water, because this is I think it is called as a philodendron lemon lime. There is another philodendron lemon lime which is heart shaped, and this is a different one. Now unfortunately I thought that the plant is doing quite well because it usually has yellow leaves, but over the period of time I realized that the yellow leaves started to get bleached out. Now this was because it was getting too much of direct sunlight. This plant is ideally supposed to be kept in indirect bright light and cannot tolerate direct sunlight. Now this is the reason why I always advise you guys to keep certain plants in indirect bright light. So this is how it looks like. You can see only the tip is left with yellow color. The entire leaf is bleached out because of direct sunlight, and when there is a lot of sunlight, the color of the plant also tends to fade off. You can see ideally this plant looks like it's a variegated plant, but it's actually not. The leaf is completely bleached out because of direct sunlight. Now this entire lane where I have kept these plants, they were doing quite well, and here you can see this is the initial start of bleaching. You can see the leaf is turning yellow. Now this is not because of overwatering or because of over fertilizers. This is because of the excess sun. You can see the other leaf, which is more in the shade, is doing extremely well, whereas this portion, like you will be able to see, this entire portion is where it gets that sunlight. So you can see all of that plants or leaves that are coming in contact with that sunlight are getting burnt. You can see this one is doing extremely well because this is right at the back, but the ones in this lane, that is the front lane, you can see there is a lot of damage, and this is all because of the strong sunlight. Now there were a couple of more plants. I have moved them out from this space because they were all getting burnt like this. So you need to be extremely careful, especially when the sun's direction starts to change. This is exactly what tends to happen. You can see these leaves were a little bit more forward, and that's why they have got kind of bleached out and burnt. And a lot of times, as I've said, there are a couple of reasons behind the leaves turning yellow. That could be because of overwatering, underwatering, too much of moisture in the soil, and this is another reason which will lead to the discoloration of the leaves, and that is when there is excess sunlight, especially for plants that do not like too much of sunlight. So this is what happens. Whereas you can see this one is a flowering plant. It's doing extremely well. Unfortunately my calathea is completely gone off. It's not going to do quite well. It's almost dead, I think. But you can see the flowering plants are doing much well because they prefer a good amount of light. So this amount of light is enough for our flowering plants, but it's definitely not a good idea for our foliage plants. So you can see how much of difference each plant has. Each plant has a different requirement. You can see this plant is doing extremely well, even though it gets a good amount of the same light what this plant gets. But whereas this flowering plant is doing extremely well, the leaves are looking fantastic, whereas this one has lost all that and has got bleached out. So every plant has a very different requirement when it comes to sunlight. So all you have to do is just keep a watch of how your plants. So to be on the safer side, all your foliage plants, do not keep them in direct sunlight, not even a little bit. You can see what's going to happen because the direction of the sun also tends to change, so you have to keep a watch on that. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and keep planting.